Think about the last time you woke up at 2 a.m. and just laid there, staring at the ceiling. Your brain was running. You weren't anxious. You weren't sick. You just couldn't sleep. And the longer you laid there, the more frustrated you got. So you grabbed your phone, scrolled for 20 minutes, and eventually drifted off, feeling like something was wrong with you. Nothing was wrong with you. In fact, your body was doing exactly what it was built to do. What felt like a malfunction was actually a 300,000-year-old program, trying to run inside a world it was never designed for. Here's what nobody tells you. The way you sleep right now, one long block, 8 hours straight, lights out from 10 to 6, is one of the newest things humans have ever done. For the overwhelming majority of human history, nobody slept like that. Not even close. The single sleep block you've been chasing your whole life didn't exist as a standard until the Industrial Revolution. Before that, across centuries, across continents, across cultures that had nothing to do with each other, humans slept in two separate pieces. Every night, without exception. Historians called it first sleep and second sleep. You went to bed shortly after dark, slept for roughly 4 hours, then woke up. Not because of noise, not because of a bad dream. You just woke up, and then you stayed awake for an hour or two in the middle of the night before falling back asleep until dawn. That was it. That was the full human night, split clean in half. And this wasn't some fringe behavior. This wasn't a quirk of one region or one era. Researchers have found references to first sleep and second sleep. In medieval prayer books, in court records from the 1400s, in medical texts, in private letters from ordinary people, in Homer's Odyssey. A French physician in the 16th century wrote detailed advice about what couples should do during the window between first and second sleep. A doctor's manual from the same period told patients that the best time to study and reflect was during the watch, the quiet hours between the two halves of sleep. For centuries, nobody thought this was unusual, because it wasn't. It was just the night. So what happened to it? And more importantly, what were people actually doing during that window in the dark? The answer is stranger than you'd expect, and it might explain something about your own mind that nobody has ever been able to explain to you before. You wake up, it's somewhere around 2 a.m. The fire has burned down to coals. The camp is quiet. Everyone around you is awake too, because this is just what happens. This is the watch. And for the next hour, maybe 2, the night belongs to you in a way that no other part of the day ever does. This is what the middle of the night looked like for most of human history. Not a crisis, not a problem, a space. A built-in gap between the two halves of sleep that people filled with the things they couldn't fit into the daylight hours. The historical record on this is surprisingly detailed. People visited neighbors. They had sex. They prayed. They interpreted their dreams while the images were still sharp and fresh. They lay in the dark and thought. Not about anything urgent, just thought. Medieval doctors actively recommended this window for reflection. Some writers did their best work during the watch because the mind was calm in a way it simply wasn't during the day. And around the fire, something else was happening. In 2014, anthropologist Polly Wiesner published a study on the Juhuansi Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert, one of the last groups on Earth still living close to the original human pattern. What she found was a clean divide. During the day, roughly 80% of conversations were practical. Who's hunting where, which plants are ready, logistics, negotiations, problem solving. Daytime talk was work. But at night around the fire, everything shifted. At night, 81% of conversations were stories. Distant people, great adventures, myths about how the world began, jokes that made the whole camp erupt. Wiesner argued that this is where human culture was actually born, not in the day, in the night. Around the fire, in the hours between first and second sleep, humans learned to imagine things that didn't exist yet. Other lives, other worlds, other possibilities. The campfire was the original theater, the original classroom, the original church, all at once. And here's what makes this stranger. The people living this way weren't tired the next morning. They weren't dragging themselves through the day, running on broken sleep. The two-phase pattern gave them everything they needed. 4 hours, a window, 4 more hours. That was a complete night. The exhaustion, the grogginess, the feeling of never quite getting enough rest, that came later. That came with us. Because at some point, something changed. Something erased this entire pattern so completely that we forgot it ever existed. And it happened faster than you would ever believe. In 1992, a psychiatrist named Thomas Weyer at the National Institute of Mental Health ran an experiment that should have changed everything. He took a group of healthy volunteers and removed all artificial light from their lives. No lamps, no screens, no streetlights bleeding through the curtains. For 1 month, they lived with 14 hours of darkness every night, roughly what our ancestors would have experienced before electricity extended the evening indefinitely. Within a few weeks, every single participant settled into the same pattern without being told to. 4 hours of sleep, 1 to 3 hours of quiet wakefulness, 4 more hours of sleep. Nobody suggested it. Nobody coached them toward it. Their bodies just did it, as if some ancient program had been sitting dormant inside them the whole time, waiting for the right conditions to switch back on. But what Ware found next was the part that stopped people cold. He measured hormone levels during that wakeful window between the two halves of sleep. And what he found wasn't a stressed body fighting to stay awake. It wasn't cortisol, it wasn't anxiety. His participants were producing elevated levels of prolactin, a hormone associated with meditation, with deep relaxation, with the calm that follows orgasm. Their brains were in a state unlike any normal waking state. The participants themselves described it as peaceful, reflective, almost dreamlike while being fully conscious. Vere concluded that this wasn't just a gap in sleep. It was its own distinct phase of human consciousness, a state that existed every single night for 300,000 years, a state that most people alive today have never once experienced. So what killed it? The answer is almost insultingly simple. Light. In the 1600s, cities began installing street lamps. Paris went first under Louis XIV, who wanted to push crime off the streets. London followed. Candles got cheaper. Gas lamps arrived in the 1800s. Then in 1879, Thomas Edison commercialized the electric light bulb. And within a single generation, the night, as humans had known it since the beginning of our species, was gone. Not gradually. Gone. Your body still runs on the same circadian rhythm it always did. When light hits your retina at 11 at night, your brain reads it as daytime. It suppresses melatonin. It delays sleep. It fragments the architecture of the night into something your nervous system was never designed to handle. Researchers have found that just 1 week of camping with no artificial light resets melatonin cycles by nearly 2 hours. 1 week. That's all it takes for 300,000 years of programming to start reasserting itself. We didn't just change when we sleep, we deleted an entire state of human consciousness, and then we replaced it with insomnia and told people to see a doctor. So the next time you wake up at 2 a.m. and lie there in the dark, unable to fall back asleep, here's what's actually happening. Your body is not broken. Your sleep is not disordered. You are not anxious or sick or suffering from some modern condition that needs to be managed with supplements and sleep trackers and blackout curtains. You are doing exactly what every human being on this planet did every single night for 300,000 years. Your body is looking for the watch. It is looking for the window. It is running a program so old and so deep that a single month without electric light is enough to bring it all the way back. The tragedy isn't that you wake up. The tragedy is what you do next. You grab your phone, you flood your retinas with blue light. You scroll through things that don't matter at 11 at night or 2 in the morning, and you wonder why you feel hollowed out the next day. You are taking the one window your nervous system was built to use for rest and reflection, and you are filling it with noise. Your ancestors used that window to lie in the dark and think, to process their dreams, to feel the particular kind of calm that Ware's prolactin data captured in a lab, and that medieval doctors were prescribing in manuals 500 years before neuroscience existed to explain it. There's a version of your night that you have never experienced, a version where the darkness is not a problem to be solved, but a space to inhabit, where waking up at 2 a.m. is not a failure, but an arrival, where your mind does something it almost never gets to do in the relentless forward motion of a modern day. It gets quiet, not sleep quiet, awake quiet, present and calm, and not pointed at anything in particular. That state has a name in the historical record. People called it the watch. Scientists found it in a lab in 1992, and your body has been trying to get back to it every single night since Edison flipped the switch. We conquered the dark. We flooded the night with light and called it progress. And in doing so, we lost something that had no name because it never needed one. It was just the night. It was just what happened. It was just what it felt like to be human before we decided that every hour needed to be productive and every gap needed to be filled. You were built for the dark, and somewhere inside you, you already know that. You feel it every time you wake up at 2 a.m. and the house is completely still, and for just a moment, before the anxiety kicks in, there's something that almost feels like peace. That's not insomnia. That's memory.